Well, I'm a painter, and my name is Wright. And quite recently, I've also been working on charcoal painting drawings. It's not that I was working only and first on the oil paintings, because when I was a student in art school, so my art academy education, we painted, but we also had drawing lessons a lot. So it was something that was always there. It's not that it came out of the blue as something new, so it evolved through the years. I always worked with it before. If you have a certain talent for working with images, you're interested in looking at things and unraveling, at least for me, what am I seeing? And that was already there when I was little. And also the fascination when I saw somebody drawing, or my uncle is a tattooist, so I was always with my nose on what he was doing there. It was fascinating. It was a completely new world, like, oh, what's happening? An image that's appearing. I don't have such a good vision. And I also had this when I was little, so I mean, it's not extreme or anything, but always this thing I noticed that other people see more sharp than I do, so I want to see it closer, and then you get this confrontation of zooming in and zooming out, and a bit like what a camera does. An oil painting, it depends on the sizes, of course, because if I make a piece like the mouse that goes to 4 meters, then it takes me 3 months. But an average piece like let's say Brave New Fruit over there, it takes me about 3 weeks, I think, to finish it, to actually paint it. But then I'm not talking about the studies that I'm making, because that goes in between of all the works. I mean, I can be painting and one day I can have an idea and start photographing it and work on the computer at night, and then during the day when I have daylight I'm painting. So, but let's say an average of 3 to 4 weeks. And the charcoal drawings like 3 days to maximum a week. Yeah, but that's also not included the studies, because they also come in between. So that's the photographical work, and that's more like, oh, what's happening there? I can walk around in my studio and it seems like nothing is there actually fascinating to see. But then I look in the corner and I see the web of a spider, and I get fascinated by it. Again, I want to zoom in and I want to see what's happening, what's occurring there. And then it's a found thing, but I put it on my computer and I start to, you know, how do you say, distort it again, and start to work on it to make the image, to make it more exciting to me, or so I'm able to be more expressive with it. So it's never just like reality that you glue on a canvas or a paper. Brave New Fruit to me was interesting because it also has like this surreal touch to it, which is something that's also, I think in every show there is at least one piece that becomes more surreal. But I think through investigating or through thinking about realism and reality and reality-related work and how do we interpret things around us, that it's inevitable to do something with the surreal side as well. Like a Brave New Fruit, I have no answers, but it's just from reading about genetical manipulation that you start questioning, like, is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Where are we going to evolve as human beings? And what does it mean? What will we be eating, or who will we be within I don't know how many years? Yeah. Then the Dust to Dust piece, it's about mortality again. You get the relationship with the 17th century still life painting, where you see, of course, the still lifes and the little insects next to it, while I'm zooming into one of the details, let's say, and then of course the broken wing and yeah. So I think it's an image that you can reflect on, and I don't really have to explain everything on how you can read it, because I can tell something about what was my starting point to make a work, but I can't dictate how people interpret the work. So yeah.
work in a variety of mediums, but recently it's been on paper, various mediums on paper, and then I cut up the paper and reassemble the paper. Specifically, the piece that's here in the gallery developed over a 5-month period or 4-month period. The painting, it started out pretty much accidentally. I was drawn to a lot of the marks that were accumulating on the sides of my drawings, and I wanted to isolate those. I was just loving the individual marks, so I started isolating them by just cutting them out. And one of the first installations I did was just hundreds of marks pinned to the wall. So now it's gone from finding accidental marks and ancillary mark making to creating my own marks. And specifically in this show, the marks are all based on text. And what I do is I take texts that are important to me or important to the themes I'm working with and paint them out. It's like an oil paint. In the case of this installation, it's all oil on paper. And I'm just literally copying the text in my own handwriting in oil paint and then cutting out the words and then reassembling them into these sort of cloud-like forms. Many of my works from a few years ago were these kind of complex webs made up of hundreds of individual drawings on paper. And I would assemble these webs with these hundreds of drawings, and I would hang them in the middle of the room as a kind of sculpture that had these two different lives. And one of them was the paper side, which all you could see was the silhouettes of the drawings and the tape holding it together, and it was just this white sort of lace-like form. And on the other side were the drawings that made up the shape. To me, the work was always the white side, because that's how I put it together, and I was really just thinking of the arrangement of these shapes in terms of a formalistic approach, in terms of just seeing it as white and black or space and, positive and negative. But when I would hang them in the room, nobody paid attention to the white side, the side that was paper, this very formal side. In order to get people to see them that way, I would hang them against the wall so you couldn't see the drawing side. You only see the paper side, the white side, except for that they were hung against mirrored walls. So if you really did want to see the drawings, you would have to look through the piece into the mirror and then see the reflection of the drawing. And then I just started experimenting with cut mirrors and playing with the kinds of reflections. And at some point I just realized that before hanging the work in front of these cut mirrored mylars, there was something happening with just the space itself. Statue, it's playing with the idea that a statue is something much more permanent in its feelings. We think of concrete or marble, and this is, of course, a very ephemeral-like object. It's just paper, and every time I install it, it gets installed in a different way, so it's always changing. So a statue, we think of something as very firm and not changing. And the subject matter is ideas of control. And in this case specifically, it has to do with a Catholic doctrine. I like the idea that simple ideas can have these profound culminations. And so this piece, it takes the Catholic doctrine of the Assumption of the Virgin Mary. I sort of play with these ideas a lot in terms of what is real, and where does fiction and fact, where do they separate and where do they come together, and what's the relationship between the two, and how those things manipulate. I'm interested in the kind of manipulation of these doctrines in real life. So my idea is to paint it out, understand what it means, and then sort of cut it up and assemble it into this sort of cloud-like form, which I felt it was all my life, just this heavy cloud of gray area of what is true and what is not. And I also felt there's a great kind of a fervor, at least in New York City, building of the Freedom Tower has the same kind of religion, or a kind of understanding that this is not a religious response, but it had a kind of another side to it. It's not just a building, really. And a lot of my work takes these ideas and uses simple everyday objects to support them. So sawhorses, or work tables, or ladders. And in this case, I wanted to find a sawhorse that had some bite behind it, and I worked for months to acquire a sawhorse from the actual building site at the Freedom Tower, the World Trade Center site. And then there's also some candles snuffed with some dirt, and the dirt is from the Supreme Court, the grounds of the Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. And I'm just interested in the idea that 6 of the 9 current judges on the Supreme Court are declared practicing Catholics. So it's just combining these 3 elements: the actual doctrine cut into this cloud-like form, supported by this sawhorse from the World Trade Center, and then this dirt from the grounds in D.C. at the Supreme Court. And just calling into question, these are 6 of the 9 judges making some of the most important decisions in the country, and yet they claim to believe in these really fanciful ideas. So I'm just interested in that.